Welcome, welcome. Hey, folks. My name is Dalian Ayekbor, and welcome to today's episode of GenAI Live. You can find us here every Wednesday from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time. And yeah, of course, as always, we have a great show with some hosts, some guests to get you kicked off for your day. Brian, you want to go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction?
Hey, thank you, Diane. Welcome, people, to GenAI Live. My name is Brian Terry. I'm a Senior Partner Solution Architect here at AWS, focusing on GenAI migration, and I'm super excited to have you join us in this journey of talking to our partners about the latest and greatest in AWS and what our partners are doing with GenAI. So I'm super excited. Diane, I'm super excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. And I know it's a special day for you, Brian, particularly. I know you probably didn't want me to announce it, but for our folks tuning in, it's Brian's birthday. Shoot him some comments, some love here in the comment section. Sure, that'll make his day as we get started here in today's episode. So I had to throw you there. Yeah, of course.
Happy to make it another year, so that's great.
Absolutely. Oh, Brian, before we get into some of the guests that we have today, I know we have some things coming up. I think on last episode you mentioned we have New York Summit coming up next week. I know you'll be there. I'll be in attendance as well. Is there anything you're looking forward to, particularly at the New York Summit?
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to meeting our partners and meeting our customers and just in person. I think I love these big events, and I just love talking to people. So if any of you are going to be at the New York Summit and you see me around, please just say hello and let's just chat.
Likewise, right? Seeing the customers, seeing how we impact, broad impact, and how you coming up to us, we definitely love to have those conversations, see what you're doing, what you're working on with your company, and how you're maybe leveraging our platform to empower that. So look forward to chatting with some of you folks.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm super excited about this show, Dalian. I mean, I think, I'm always excited every week, I guess because we get to learn new and exciting things every week.
We never disappoint with the lineup here, and this week's no change from that. So definitely have some star-studded folks getting ready to come on the show here shortly. Before that, I did want to mention something quickly. Some advancements, some announcements I've seen recently in the GenAI space as it pertains to AWS. For those folks that are leveraging QuickSight, you might be familiar with some of our QuickSight improvements with QuickSight with Q, Amazon Q, one of our products. And you'll be happy to know that we recently expanded our region support for that. So 7 additional regions were added for QuickSight and Q support, some being in Asia. I know US East 2 or Ohio region here in the US, as well as some European regions as well. So if you're interested or holding off on using QuickSight and Q for some of your dashboarding and business intelligence tools, now's the time to start exploring if your region's been added.
Oh man, that's super exciting news. I mean, those tools coming together, I think it's going to be great for our partners and customers.
It definitely makes my job easier when looking to dashboard things. I'd always fumble around with trying to get the right data, get it the right format and the right graphs. But QuickSight and Q has definitely been a game changer in terms of how I leverage those tools and can create something very quickly if just attaching the data to QuickSight and then writing something, and there you go. You got your dashboard. So it's great stuff.
Yeah, super excited. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually excited to see where it goes next. I mean, if we have all these capabilities now, I mean, I wonder what this looks like in 12 months. So
it's only one way to find out. Another birthday. We'll see what happens then, Ryan.
Yeah, we'll check back in on my next birthday.
Awesome. I guess at this time, we'll bring on our first guest today. I think we're joined. Excellent. Hey there, Emily. You want to go ahead and give yourself an introduction here to our folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And Brian, happy birthday. Hosting on your birthday rather than, maybe doing something more fun. Emily Kruger, I'm Chief Innovation Officer at Loka. Loka is a premier tier partner with AWS. We're a software consultancy based in the Silicon Valley area. Been working with companies ranging in size from brand new startups to Fortune 500 companies for more than 20 years, helping them to build and launch innovations. And over the course of the past 2 years or so, we've, of course, been very focused on generative AI. We're one of the leading generative AI partners at AWS. Won Innovation Partner of the Year last year at reInvent, which was super exciting. And yeah, excited to share some of those stories. We've worked with more than 300 customers to date. The majority of those have actually moved to production, so have stories of these things working actually in the wild outside of proof of concepts. And I want to talk a little bit about, some of the things that we're seeing and some of the great customer stories that, Loka and AWS share.
Absolutely. Thank you. And welcome to the show. You are one of our valued partners, and we love what you guys are doing in the Gen AI space. Can you tell us a little bit of how your company got started in the Gen AI space, and what have you seen since you started until now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a wild ride, right? In the last couple of years in terms of all of the different innovations and changes every day, like, quick site news just today. So yeah, I think the Loka, again, we've been around for about 20 years. Bobby Mukherjee, who's our founder and CEO, I think saw the potential of AI ML more broadly, of course, quite early. So we've had a pretty established AI ML team for more than a decade before kind of this whole wave of generative AI came out. And, we had, some early projects actually that had come to us before people were even calling this generative AI. Of course, it was a little bit before the drop of everything happening with, OpenAI, and then the sort of rush of all these other wonderful models. So yeah, we were, I think, very well positioned with great ML engineers, very hungry, interested in learning. And we started getting, we were one of the first partners with kind of an offer in market with AWS around building out sort of a discovery and a POC period with customers to really validate early ideas. We started doing that before Bedrock was launched, right? We're doing this, like launching those on SageMaker, working with sort of some of the open source models, et cetera, that were available in the ecosystem at that point. And then, of course, this has evolved so much over the course of the last 2 years. It was, all chatbot, RAG if you were fancy, 2 years ago. These days, a lot about agents, multi-agentic systems, really thinking through more complicated data sources. And then having, I think, more accessible options also for generative AI. I mean, products like QuickSight with Q, allow customers to be able to use NLQ capabilities without actually having to deploy anything and turn that out and show it to their customers. Like those kinds of innovations that are, the simple use cases, and the very complicated ones are more and more possible all the time now, which has been really fun to see and never a dull moment.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds like you're real well acquainted in the space with Loka, and it sounds like you have been working with some great customers here. I know you mentioned over 300 customers, and I
Yeah.
kind of want to touch on that, Emily. So what trends are you seeing in the space with the customers? Is there a common use case they're coming to Loka for? What seems to be the current trends that your company is seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned agents, I think, 2025 has really kind of turned the corner with the maturity of a lot of these models and their ability to take on more complicated, workflows and really move from maybe like, having a model there where you can, query it, ask some questions and have a response, or a simple, one action, we'll call it, things like categorizing, or being able to help with, summarization tasks, to now really moving more into like broader systems thinking. How can I be thinking about, models that can interact with each other, models that can take action, of course, on my behalf, but, and then, how do these chain together? How do they communicate? And this has really unlocked a lot of very fascinating use cases. Some that come to mind are in the financial services space, like being able to use these models, like sort of agentic systems, to, for instance, do better advice for personal wealth advising, or being able to look at agentic systems to be able to orchestrate better customer service experiences inside of call centers and et cetera. And so, I mean, just a lot of different very powerful production use cases. And then I think the models themselves have become much more capable of handling the multimodal data, right? So data, like rather than it just being text, we all think about LLMs and working with lots of unstructured text, now being able to also, with much better sort of accuracy and performance, be able to interpret images and videos, audio, but also be able to output that, right, in ways that are credible. I mean, there's still sometimes the, weird 6-finger problem, right, in image generation, but I think these are getting better. And the models themselves are, I think, now ready to move into prime time. So we have enterprise customers that are looking at, doing more complicated things with multimodal systems, and maybe combining many models together in these sort of, more agentic systems, or even in a more traditional sense, like maybe a computer vision model with something like Nova, which does very good video analysis and interpretation. Combining those can that have a much more powerful outcome than either of those models individually. So that's been very exciting. And then, lastly, I think there's just a big diversity of models happening. I think people are realizing they don't want to be locked into one choice for a model, because there's models that are maybe better at different outcomes, right? And so being able to create systems where you maybe are leveraging the best in class for open source, you're looking at Claude for certain types of use cases where it really shines. You might be thinking about smaller language models and fine tuning those for very domain specific use cases. And all of these existed in some form, of course, over the course of the last 2 years, but they've really gotten, I think, competitive to the point where they could be used, in a meaningful production workload. They're not just kind of play around with the POC and then wait for these technologies to mature a little more.
Oh, wow. That's super exciting stuff that's going on there. So as far as these solutions, are you seeing these going directly to production, or have you seen like it evolve from this like proof of concept, creating this thing, and then now we're like putting things in production that these tools? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had throughout our generative AI journey, like a pretty good success rate getting our customers to production. But I actually think a lot of that, I mean, obviously some of that is, being able to work with the models, our great engineering team, our wonderful customers coming with good use cases. But I think a lot of this actually needs to happen upfront before you even write a line of code, in terms of thinking through like what are really the valuable use cases that are going to move my business forward. These models are not free to run. They're particularly not free to train if you're going to go down that route. So what is going to be an ROI positive use case for me that has a meaningful going to have a meaningful outcome? And we pretty much start with this discovery period. Sometimes customers come to us with use cases and we're like, yeah, that's a cool idea, but honestly, I don't think this is going to be worth it for you, and you're probably not going to keep it running long term. Let's think, rather than broadly about productivity across my business, very specifically about an area where maybe I can automate a repetitive human task and give that, sort of more economies of scale to people. So I think we see this in, reviewing security footage, or looking at, I'd mentioned support and support triage, but also areas of being able to say do manual inputs of medical transcripts, so that they can, so the customer patients can get better results. So all of these things, like really being targeted around what is the core value of your business and laying that up front, then moving into like a POC period, right? So making sure that the technical solution is going to work, but also, is your data ready? Like, do you have all the right building blocks in place? And testing that out with a proof of concept phase. And then only, once you've mastered that barrier, then thinking about production. So being very systematic about your journey, and making sure that you're validating all the way along that this is something that's going to have a high impact for your business. It's going to be something that's ultimately going to be like, make your business money or save your business money. And, it has a strong feasibility to run successfully at scale in a production environment.
You touched on a lot of good things there. And I wanted to particularly hit on, so you talked about, I love how you mentioned customers are now, or you're advising them to focus on kind of the long-term elements rather than the quick fix. Let's get something out, because they're probably not going to keep it long-term. It's not going to be a value add to them in the long term. And also particularly about data, as you look to attach the LLMs to your company's data repositories, your databases. The type of data you're adding to these models is very important. And I've seen a lot of challenges come about with how your data is structured, and where you're keeping it, and how all of that is taken into account. What are you seeing, Emily, and how are you advising your customers if they come to you with, some of these hurdles, these data hurdles as they try to implement into their environment? How are you addressing, how are you advising your customers on get started with correcting or fixing or making it so it is easy implementation for the long term and not just a quick little band-aid fix?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this obviously is something, data readiness has always been, something that we've had to think about in the AI/ML space, in the, data engineering space. There's an old statistic that said something like, 80% of big data projects fail. And I think we use the same stat today for, for AI/ML, right? This is, and a lot of this does come down to like how mature, how ready, is your data. Generative AI models have some advantages over traditional models in that they can do a better job, of course, in interpreting, unstructured data, but that doesn't mean that you can just sort of throw total garbage at it and hope for good outcomes. And so I think one of the data readiness is something that we look at early on. Some of this is around, of course, like, is your data accessible? Is it clean? I think something a lot of companies don't think about until after they've gotten through maybe a POC phase and they're thinking about the practicalities of moving it to production is the security and sort of, regulatory stance. Like, are you working with data that includes, PII and you're, regulated? Are you, in the healthcare space and you're governed by HIPAA and you need to be really careful about what you're doing with patient health data? Those pieces often have, foundational, like, is your data set up secure, but also, has the right permissions, associated with it, so that like these model and this data may be hopefully not going outside of the security boundary, for instance, of your AWS account, and you're able to, control the security and, the regulatory requirements, which are quickly coming to the US. They already have laws in the EU around AI governance, and then I think that also thinking through the baselining and performance. How do I measure my model? And can I create a good evaluation framework from the model that I have? Often customers, again, don't think about labeled or ground truth data. It still has value, in the generative AI space, where you want to make sure that we can interpret when the model comes out, like, was that a good answer or was it a bad answer, without hopefully having a human need to evaluate it every time, although there's a lot of value in human in the loop systems. So each of those pieces are something we try to think about some upfront, right? Before you get down a path where you've done something you're excited about, and then you have to kind of go back and reinvent the wheel, so to speak, before you can move that forward into a meaningful production environment.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot to think about. But I imagine your company is directly helping other companies and partners of AWS do this and achieve these goals. I mean, the work that you guys do is like, ahead of its time, I think.
I mean, it's been very exciting. I think we've seen use cases, and something I think we'll talk about a little later. I think one of the areas I'm really most excited about is the potential of these generative AI models in spaces like drug discovery, or being able to really help, cure rare diseases. And we're seeing really good performance with sort of dozens of customers at this point around using DNA and protein language models. So these are models that have been trained on sort of entire human or primate genomes, and then retraining those with, say, cancer genomes or bacteriophage sort of protein clusters or soybean genomes, to be able to get better outcomes for like either targeting specific, so narrowing down the target space for specific drugs, specific kinds of diseases that we are trying to cure, or producing more productive plants, right, that can help to feed the world. And so I'm really excited about these, like, the movement toward these domain-specific models and use cases, and their ability to, I think, have a really meaningful long-term impact on, of course, these companies, but more broadly for the world.
Cool. Yeah. So, in my space, I focus a lot on GenAI migrations. Have you seen that pattern in your company? Have companies started to, go down a path of using one technology or generative AI tool and then wanted to migrate? And is your company helping with that?
Yeah, definitely. And we're definitely seeing growing demand for migrations. Obviously, as an AWS partner, we're primarily looking at migrations into the AWS ecosystem from other model providers or cloud providers outside of it. I think that something that a lot of companies are realizing is that model agnosticism is extremely important. So the ability to think about, well, how do I set up my core infrastructure, whether that in the AWS world, that's something like Bedrock or it's SageMaker, and be able to use it to address a variety of use cases, or as I mentioned, maybe have a couple of different models that may be working together, either to be solving sort of different purposes as they do in an agentic use case, or even one model where you have one use case and you don't want every single response to go through your most expensive, model, right? You want it to do routing, where in a production environment, someone asks something totally nonsensical, it goes a null pathway. If they ask something simple, it can go to a smaller, simpler, cheaper model. Something more expensive, it can go to a larger one. And these are things that are really important in terms of like having the ability to access these models easily from the same infrastructure and have that be scalable for a production environment. So I think that that's a big value proposition. I mentioned security and regulatory environment. Certainly Amazon has always had kind of best in class in terms of thinking through managing the security boundary, giving a lot of control to the user. Services like Bedrock or SageMaker running entirely inside, of a customer's VPC. And so I think that that's been another reason where we've seen a lot of moving and migrations. And then there's just so much diversity, in this space. So sort of, I guess, an adjacent point to model agnosticism is you don't know what the best model is tomorrow or who's going to drop the next, best thing, or something that's going to come out that's much more domain specific for your specific area, use case or industry. And so, being able to quickly understand, like use those models, experiment with them, run it against your evaluation framework and see if it actually performs better than the last one that you did, and not have to spend a lot of time building something from scratch each time is another, I think, huge advantage that Amazon has and a reason that customers are thinking about making those migration moves.
Yeah, definitely the models from what I've seen from the customers I've worked with, being tied to a model is definitely scary to them, right? They don't want to commit too much, and it makes sense, right? The advancements and the different models that are coming out quite regularly is you don't want to commit too much to a single model if in 2 months something else comes better. So being able to quickly switch those out for the latest, greatest, or better fit for your use case is definitely some trends I've been seeing and glad to see, especially Bedrock. It makes it very easy to swap, and get those going.
It's your endpoint, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we only got a little bit more time with you, Emily, and you did give us a little teaser just a moment ago about something that you may be showing us. So I definitely wanted to get to that. Don't want to leave the audience at the edge of their seat for too long.
Awesome. Yeah. I think one of the things we wanted to show today is just to give people an idea of the power, of these models and the power of agentic systems. I think that, inspiration is often kind of the first step, right? It's like, how can I think about these, relatively complicated models and how could they really apply meaningfully to my business? So what we're going to show is something that we've built. We call it sort of our drug discovery assistant. And it's essentially not a product. Loka is not a product company, right? We are a services company, but it's meant to show what you can do with an agentic system that is going and querying different models, both traditional, or I will say more traditional models and are not generative models like AlphaFolds, as well as these generative AI like ESM, Protobert family models that are more specific around DNA, working with DNA and protein sequences, and how can that accelerate the drug discovery process for pharma companies. But then how can you think about these systems that work together and call different things and more broadly apply it to, to what your business is. So we have a little demo video to show you this, because I think it really showcases like some of the potential of these models to make big impact. All right, so we've got the right screen up here. And I'm just going to play this, and guys, let me know if you can hear the voice.
Loka has built an advanced drug discovery assistant, in short, ADA, an LLM-based assistant specialized in helping researchers and engineers with drug discovery tasks. The tasks included in this assistant cover the different stages of drug discovery. Target identification workflows can be achieved by querying pathway databases for quick identification of intervening proteins and genes, functional network databases for protein-protein interactions like StringDB, and gene expression databases such as GEO to explore disease-related expression changes. Potential binders and their poses can also be tested by retrieving the target of interest sequence and folding it, docking candidate molecules against that target by running in silico docking methods. Let's see a full workflow in action. To start off, let's start by asking ADA, to give us more information about a pathway of interest. As you can see, it automatically queries the KEGG database, returning the main pathways involved in the disease of interest. The output includes descriptions and even images returned from the database itself. To further refine your analysis, you can give it simple prompts, like the one you see here, to summarize the information previously displayed. Let's dig a bit deeper. This time, we want to know a bit more about the proteins of interest and if they have meaningful interactions with other proteins. For this particular example, ADA queries StringDB, which contains functional information on protein interaction. Once again, the assistant collects and summarizes the results. Let's try to understand if these proteins are relevant in disease states. Here, ADA queries the NoGEO database, which contains a lot of information on expression studies relevant for the disease of interest. Once again, information is collected, parsed, and summarized. Additionally, this analysis can be downloaded and inspected to detail, namely by downloading CSVs. A database that was previously hard to query and search information on has been quickly searched and summarized. ADA also allows you to capture more information on proteins and genes discovered during your analysis. Here, the user decided to inspect the PIK3CA kinase and asked ADA to retrieve its sequence and fold it. In this particular case, ADA knows it needs to query UniProt to retrieve the adequate output. ADA also allows you to call state-of-the-art models. In this specific case, the user requested ADA to fold the protein of interest, which called the ESM fold model. The protein structure is obtained and can be subsequently rendered on a 3D visualizer. ADA is also able to handle molecules and call adequate models for their study. In this specific case, the user requested a specific model to be docked to the target protein, which prompted ADA to call diffdock, a known diffusion model for blind docking of molecules to handle this task. Once again, the output can be rendered on the 3D visualizer for closer inspection. At its core, ADA is powered by a back-end agent capable of retrieving and interacting with internal and external databases, executing predictive models and generating research outputs, all triggered by natural language prompts. No more scripting, no more switching between tools. Just ask and ADA handles the rest. Built for life sciences teams, ADA turns fragmented, manual research into seamless, scalable progress, saving hundreds of hours on high-effort pipelines. And
okay, well, let's pause there. Because I know we don't have a lot of time before the next guest. Obviously, a very, domain-specific, deep in the language of proteins and protein folding. But I hope that for people watching, that this really gives you a sense that these models can do very powerful things, and that you can be looking across a combination of internal databases, external databases, multiple models, and create sort of intelligent systems that know based on your answers which of these models, which of these databases to use, and can accurately summarize that data, get it back to you, take actions on your behalf, and in this case, accelerate the drug discovery process and the sort of typical workflows of someone who's more in the bioinformatics space. But you could imagine this across kind of any industry or kind of any role where, or even consumer, use cases where this could really accelerate, how we're interacting, with websites, how we're thinking about doing our jobs more effectively.
Absolutely. I mean, that's good content. So since we only have a few minutes left, where can our customers and partners and people viewing this presentation contact you or understand what Loka's doing in the generative AI space?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can obviously go to our website. It's just loka.com. Pretty easy. Our CEO got that 4-letter domain name a long time ago. And see a lot more stories that we have about customers that we've done, in the generative AI space, but also data migration, sort of our broader practice area. And then folks are welcome to reach out to me, directly as well. So I'm just Emily@loka.com. Happy to answer your questions. We do a lot of just jumping on calls with customers, talking through from an ideas perspective what makes sense. And then, of course, if they're interested in working, with a partner, moving down further, there's a lot of resources available through the AWS Partner Network to help execute those projects.
Emily, thank you so much for joining us today. Great demo, great conversation. Appreciate all the concepts and what's happening in the space and what you're seeing with your customers. With that being said, that ends the first session of today. So we'll be back here in just a moment and with another guest. So stay tuned, folks. Thank you, Emily.
Welcome back to GenAI Live. This has been an exciting episode so far. This is the second part of a two-part talk. So my name is Brian Terry, and I'm a senior partner solution architect here at AWS, focusing on GenAI migration. And I'm joined here with my co-host. Dylan, how about you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hey, folks, my name is Dalian Ayekpour. I'm a senior technical account manager supporting customers in the travel and hospitality space and also working on generative AI projects. Today, thank you for joining us for our first conversation and staying with us for our second partner as we come on here in a little bit. But before we get into that, just wanted to mention you can find us here every Wednesday, except next Wednesday, as we'll be at the New York Summit, but every other Wednesday at 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time for another episode of GenAI Live.
Awesome. So I understand we have some exciting guests coming next, but I'm excited about them. So yeah, I imagine they're going to probably show us something cool in the GenAI space, and there's always something to learn.
Absolutely, especially coming off the Loka conversation, and definitely pumped up for the next guest. Definitely had a good start to the show, and I'm sure it will continue that into the second session here. I know they came with a crew here too, so we're going to be outnumbered here in a second, Brian. So with that being said, since we have multiple people coming in, unless you have anything else, I think we should bring on the guests.
Yes, let's do it. Hello, welcome to GenAI Live. How about you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll start. Matthew Payne.
On my screen, I see looks like Tamara. Okay? There now. The other guys are coming on my screen. Since you're on our side over here, Tamara, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, then we'll kick it over to our Domo colleagues.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. So my name is Tamara Stakhova. I'm the Senior Partner Solution Architect for Big Data and Analytics at AWS supporting Domo. Domo is AWS Advanced ISV partner with 3 AWS ISV competencies, such as data analytics, machine learning, and retail, as well as Amazon SageMaker Service Ready designation. This means that Domo has demonstrated deep AWS technical expertise and proven customer success across various industries, use cases, and workloads. So just briefly about Domo. Domo offers unique BI data platform that brings all your data together in one place. So it connects to your different data sources, gets data ready for analysis. With Domo, you can connect and prepare and see and take action on your data in one place. So yeah, in today's data-driven world, businesses faced with difficult tasks to analyze vast amount of information and often performing manual work to process this information to solve business tasks. And to address these challenges, companies have begun using generative AI. So combining AWS and Domo, we provide very unique solution for our customers. So we will talk about it today, I think. Yeah, this is about AWS and Domo together. So yes, please, yeah, Domo team, yeah, please introduce yourself.
Excellent. Well, with a start like that, she set you up right here, Matthew and Braxton. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, that was a great introduction. Matthew Payne, VP of Engineering here at Domo. I've been with Domo for 15 years, so the entire life cycle.
Awesome. And Braxton, I think you're up next.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Braxton, Principal Sales Engineer here at Domo. Been here at Domo about 5 years, former Domo customer, really love the product and excited to share with you today how we're bringing the power of GenAI and Agentic AI into the hands of the business users and really allowing them to interact with it and build really rapid experiences that are really powerful. So excited to be here.
Awesome.
Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, so for the people that are not familiar with Domo, can you tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys do?
Yeah, Braxton, I'll let you take that one.
Sounds good. Yeah, as I mentioned, we really bring a lot of this complex technical challenge and distill it down to a business-friendly experience. We allow you to connect to your different data sources that you might have as a business user through our library of over 1,000 different pre-built connectors and land that data into your data warehouse. Then we allow business users to build complex ETLs through a simple drag and drop experience to create data products that they can then serve up to their users. And that might be through a dashboard experience, that might be through an app, that might be through leveraging an AI chat experience to ask questions of the data using natural language and then getting back charts and visualizations and natural language summaries. And then what we're going to talk about today is how do we take that a step further and leverage agentic AI to summarize data or to automatically take actions and trigger automations. And we do this all in one platform. So there's no hopping from place to place to place, to do your data engineering, to deliver your products, to access your visualizations and your advanced analytics. It all happens inside one platform.
Wow. That's super exciting stuff. Very innovative.
Yeah, I heard you mention there, Braxton, you have over 1,000 connectors. Is that correct?
Yep.
How are your customers? I mean, that's obviously an expansive, lot of options there, and sure, I'm sure not every customer is using all of them, but how are your customers going about managing these different connections and how, Domo is adding these together? It sounds like, a one pane, one platform, have all your data sources. How is that managed on a day-to-day?
Yeah, so the connectors are certainly one of the things that set us apart at Domo. It's each connector goes out to a database, a data lake, a SaaS solution. Oftentimes we're connecting to SaaS solutions, or even marketers going out to their social channels and collecting information. So we at Domo, we manage all of those connectors, and we also allow our customers to build their own. So if 1,000 isn't enough, you can go add 1,001 and build your own connectors. But that really enables them to bring this data that's been disparate forever and bring it into one central location and start to mine the insights across those different tools. And each one of those connectors has a standard authentication method, for whatever the authentication method is for that API. And then it's really a point and click solution to say, I want to gather this data or this report, or pull information from this web property, for example, and be able to access that data. So it's incredibly powerful for business users to go out and self-serve with, of course, IT governance and all of that at the core. So as an admin of the platform, you can control which connectors your team uses, how often they pull data, things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I imagine there are a lot of use cases for this. Can you talk a little bit about some of the use cases you've seen?
Yeah, there's, I manage and work with a lot of our enterprise clients, everywhere from CPG and retail to financial services to automotive companies leveraging Domo. And so oftentimes the business units that we serve are pretty wide and varied. It could be a marketing department that's trying to do a customer 360 use case and wanting to pull internal information with external information and join that together and sort of create that picture of the customer, to, on our retail side, we're doing loss prevention and analytics on that type of stuff. So it really is pretty wide and varied. Today, we're going to talk about two specific demo use cases, one around a call center and how we can optimize call center operations. And then the second we're going to look at is around finance and how we can take a complex subject like profit and loss statements that can be very, very detailed and summarize those into actionable insights using an agent. So those are just a few use cases that I can think of off the top of my head.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, and I love to see that the close collaboration here. That even coming on today's episode, you bring your solutions architect here. So that's great to see that definitely a close relationship. Tamara, can you explain maybe some of your experiences with working with the Domo team?
Sorry, so I didn't quite understand. So
Yeah, can you just explain a little bit about what's been your experience working with Domo and
yeah,
how you've seen them evolve?
Yeah, so as I said already, so Domo is our strategic partner. So and we work together. So it's like combining AWS leading cloud technology with Domo AI-powered analytics and AI agents. AWS and Domo are working together to create next-generation solutions that use AI to automatically analyze data and provide powerful insights, make BI easier and more powerful. So, and together, yeah, we bring it everything for our customers to support any use cases. Actually, it's across industries. So, yeah, Braxton and Matthew probably have a lot to say about Domo amazing and unique product and how it helps companies solve the real world problems today.
Matthew or Braxton, do you want to add anything on to
that? Yeah, Braxton covered the breadth of the Domo product pretty well. In terms of AI and AI adoption, we're certainly seeing customers become more familiar with the techniques that are available. We have partnered closely with the Bedrock team. So all of Domo's native AI features live on top of Amazon Bedrock. And we're seeing a lot of customer value with AI coupled with our Domo native features. That's been a big win for our customers using the Domo platform. Just in terms of getting immediate value, right? Immediate ROI. It's been a big win for our customers.
And where do you commonly see your customers coming to you in their generative AI journey, right? Is this usually like they haven't had anything started up yet? Are they kind of well along and now they're seeing some gaps in their current process? Where do you meet them at usually? Like your average customer, you'd say?
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely have some customers who are tip of the spear. They're very aware of the value AI can bring, and they're just looking for the platform itself to leverage those features to get that value. And then there are others who are definitely more hesitant. Yeah, there's been over the years definitely been some bad press about data leakage in terms of data being exposed to models that shouldn't have been. So it's a wide range of customers and where they are in that maturity cycle and embracing AI. Luckily, the nature of how Domo lives on top of Bedrock, it comes with a lot of safeguards, security, and compliance concerns that customers won't get outside of that tight collaboration.
Awesome.
Yeah. So this is super exciting. I mean, I imagine that your customers are just delighted of all the features you guys have and how it's kind of helping with their productivity and so forth. I mean, this is just awesome to see.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So we know now what kind of GenAI looks like and what our customers and the use cases are doing at this point. What does the future hold if you had a crystal ball, can you talk to a little bit about what does the future look like for these kind of technologies and use cases?
Yeah, Braxton's going to go through some real concrete examples that I think will shed some light on not just what customers are doing today, but by extrapolating where things will be in the future. I think agentic, it's the buzzword in the industry right now for sure. I think immediately customers are going to use deterministic workflows coupled with AI to deliver immediate value. I think that's the safe place to start. Longer term, when customers become more familiar and comfortable with AI, I think you're going to see customers implement complete agentic solutions, meaning letting AI make decisions, letting it take the outreach to customers, allow it to make decisions on behalf of customers, in some cases even without humans in the loop. So I think there's going to be a maturity curve to get there. And that starts with building confidence in letting models supplement human workflows and eventually, get the human out of the loop where it makes sense.
So exciting.
Yeah, before I know you mentioned you have some demos, and would love to see some of those and some of the use cases here. But I do see a question that maybe we could address here in the chat, and they're particularly asking around Salesforce and Snowflake. And essentially the question is from Pankaj. There we go. Thank you so much. How does Domo add value to these different platforms? First, are these connectors, or is this something you can maybe explain for customers maybe using these platforms? How are they perceiving value from Domo on these?
Yeah, I can take that one, Matt. So I think last I checked, Salesforce is in the top 10 of our most used connectors. It's definitely one of our most robust connectors in terms of the integration that we've built specifically around business user self-service. So we have multiple Salesforce connectors into their multiple products, but the CRM being the most popular. User will authenticate using an OAuth flow in Domo. Just with one click, they'll log in, and then they're brought to a screen where they can select, do you want to browse through the different objects and fields? Do you want to paste in Salesforce SQL? Or do you just want to go pull a report? And oftentimes business users are just used to leveraging a report that they get every day and they're downloading it anyway. With a couple of clicks, that user can say, I want this report to be updated as often as every 15 minutes and brought in and landed into the Snowflake environment, sort of the cloud of their choice. And from there, they can then start to join that with other data sets. Maybe they need to upload an Excel file that has some targets. They can join all of that together, create that data product, and then start to leverage tools like our AI chat, or they can use our AI dashboard builder to instantly build a dashboard in minutes and be off to the races and examining their sales funnel, their performance metrics, things like that, really, really rapidly.
Yeah, thank you for explaining a use case that obviously our audience members are interested in, as well as I'm sure mentioning it's the top 10 data connector out of the thousands. I'm sure that's a common ask. So yeah, thank you, Bryce.
Yeah. So you said you had a demo. Can we take a possibility to take a look at the demo?
You bet. Let's do it. Okay, so as I mentioned, I've got two different demos here because these are two common patterns that we see. So the first one we're going to look at is our agentic call center and sort of how we can help improve operations in a call center, specifically by limiting the amount of swivel chairing that we're having to do from system to system. So as a call center agent, oftentimes you're going out and you're looking up different information. So this use case is sort of a just-in-time, something that would be initiated or triggered by our call system, sending an API call out to Domo to kick off this process. The second use case we're going to look at is more of a scheduled use case, and that is I have a profit and loss data set, and I need to make recommendations out to those who are in the business, and I don't want them to spend time, staring at a P&L. I want them out in the business taking action on those plans, and that's something that would happen more on a scheduled basis. You might update your P&L, after month end. And so we're going to set up a report that goes out at month end. So we've got kind of the real time, and then we have this scheduled or the batch processing, and both are going to follow a really similar pattern. In my use case here, I can see, maybe I'm sitting in the call center and I've got some people waiting on hold. And so before I even pick up the phone, we've run an agentic process to summarize information about, who might be calling. And of course, this is all fictitious information here, but we can see that Michael's calling. Michael's an executive platinum member, has 2 upcoming flights. And we've also done some analysis already to see that these flights have both been delayed 30 minutes due to some air traffic control, troubles. And so before I even get on the call, I can now review a script. I work for American Airlines in this case, and I'm an agent, and I can review, if they're concerned about their tight connection in Charlotte, I already have an answer for that. If they're looking for alternative flights, I already have some information about that. And then I have some suggested resolutions here. And so this is all really great, but let's talk about how we built this. So we're starting off here in our workflows tool, and workflows is the interface where we can invoke not only these agents, but we can also call APIs out to external systems. We can send, messages out to chat interfaces, things like that. In our case, this agent would be called through an API when our dialer system, sees a call coming in. And our first step here is an agent task. An agent task has 4 different inputs. The first one here is the input itself. So this is the information we would be getting from our incoming call system. We would say, okay, this is the incoming caller phone number. So we're going to take that and we're going to pass that into a set of tools. And so in my case, I have a few different tools here. Most of them are related to querying data. So I can query the customer lookup table. So I'm going to take that phone number and I'm going to sort of try to identify who this customer is. Are they in our sort of known database here? I can look up the customer history. What have we done with them recently? I can look up, the likelihood that their flights are going to be delayed or not. And then I can also look up the rebooking option. So if we need alternative flights, what flights are available? And so all of these would typically be something where I'm swivel chairing from system to system to system to get this information. But now I've given these tools to an agent. And then we've also given the agent, our pre-screening agent here, a role, some tasks that that this agent should be doing, if it needs to get rebooking options or if it needs to check the customer history. These are all tasks that we're giving to the agent. The agent's going to use those tools, and the final ingredient in this agent is, what do we want out? And so I want the agent to return the customer information, the recommended script, the suggested flight rebooking numbers, things like that. And we're taking all of this information and we're passing that to the next step in our process, which is our human in the loop. And I feel that a lot of these solutions that we're building, as Matt mentioned, are sort of missing this element of, okay, we don't quite trust AI to do everything yet. And so I want to now pass this information to a human in the loop. And that's what we're seeing here in our tasks and queues is I have a queue and this task has been assigned to me. And it's giving me all of this information. And I now have one place that I can take call notes. I can, if we're going to rebook a flight, I can input that information. And that then continues on in the flow. And we have a second agent here who's simply taking the notes from the call, as well as all the information from the previous agent, and writing a quick summary. And so what this might look like is we now have an automatic follow-up, for another customer here, some updated flight details, some next steps. So this agent is taking the information from the human as well as the information from the agent and writing a really nice summary email back to the customer. And so really simple. Anyone can set these up. We have customers who build agents in 30 minutes and they're really off to the races. Our second example is the profit and loss. So where the first one was real time, this is something that we would do in a batch. And so we can see here, I've selected a location. This will react to the filters on the page. And typically, someone is responsible for doing analysis on this data for the P&L. They can see the revenue by department. They can see their expense distribution. Maybe we have some high administration. But I'd have to do some digging to understand this, and I'd have to drill into the data. Instead of having to do that manually, I now have an agent that is writing me recommendations and a summary of this information. And so we've got our summary here, our key metrics, some of our critical concerns. The agent's done some root cause analysis, and it's giving us priority action. So I know in the next 30 days, I need to cost restructure for instructor scheduling and things like that. And this follows a very similar path. And so just briefly, I'll talk about a couple of these steps here. We have our SQL step where we're going out and querying by location some summary stats about our P&L. And similarly, we're looping through each one of those locations, and we are passing it a set of inputs. So you're going to, perform the analysis on this location, a set of tools. It's able to query with SQL out to our P&L data set with a set of instructions specific to those SQL queries. And then a set of instructions, I'm asking it to do analysis, provide recommendations, take into context all of the information that you've been given, and provide the content as an output, which then we could add a human in the loop to make sure that we're getting this information correct. But then it displays itself on this dashboard, and this would go out to our location. So those are 2 quick demos. I see we're coming up on time.
Yeah, awesome work you're doing there. And I did want to touch on, because I know you talked about in the demos both human in the loop scenarios, which makes sense. You don't want to necessarily fully automate these and just let them off to the races. But how much time savings do we see these solutions doing? Saving, although it still needs a human review. How much time is it saving the individuals from doing these tasks themselves manually?
Yeah, it's almost hard to calculate because, on a different, especially in the call center scenario, each call is kind of different. But if we can summarize that information and stop the human in the sort of the human swivel chair problem, you could see, up to 50% time savings per call, which translates to happier customers, increased or I guess decreased call time, resolution times, things like that. So it can really, really be impactful to the business.
Yeah, getting those agents off the phone, 50% time saving. That definitely sounds like some good metrics to me.
Yeah.
Wow, that is super cool. So we only have a few minutes left in this interview. Can you tell us how customers can get in contact with you and find out more about the solutions that your company's building?
Yeah, I think the best place to start is Domo.ai. That'll give a great overview of the Domo capabilities, as well as our agentic solutions platform, and generative AI, where we are today and where we're going.
Awesome. Well said. And I look forward to having you back on in maybe a year or so to tell us more about the innovation you guys have done. And I'm super excited about what you guys are building. And thank you for being one of our valued partners.
Yeah, your birthday next year. Let's book it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, thank you so much, Domo team. Tamara, thank you for joining us as well as our earlier guest, Emily. We appreciate our guest's time today, as well as the audience for tuning in to today's episode. As mentioned, we won't be on next week during our normal scheduled time, but catch us the week after there for another episode of GenAI Live. Look forward to seeing you then.
Awesome.